Hello and welcome. It has been a very, very long time since I've seen the lovely Neil Jones face, but we're back on. We're looking a bit more sort of rested after what I hope has been a very food-filled, festive period for us both. We've certainly got plenty to sink our teeth into when it comes to the football, because, of course, Liverpool went through to the fourth round of the FA Cup courtesy of a 2-0 win against the Gunners. I mean, we have to kick off with the Arsenal game, Neil, because, I mean, Liverpool were under pretty much heavy enemy fire for much of the game. I mean, we can talk about how wasteful Arsenal's forward line, and that has been the narrative that has kind of dominated from an Arsenal perspective. But I think in the same breath, we really have to sort of give credit to Liverpool, give credit to Liverpool's back line, just in terms of how resilient we were for the 90 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think full credit to Liverpool as a team. I think, to go back, I know it's been a while since we spoke, but to go back to that sort of the league meeting between Liverpool and Arsenal, and they came away with the 1-1 draw, and I don't think many conclusions were drawn, but I think if you were hedging your bets at that stage, I think people would have said, well, it's a better result for Arsenal. They're in probably in slightly better shape than Liverpool all round. They've gone to Anfield and got a decent point. Liverpool weren't able to break down Manchester United. They haven't broken down Arsenal really. But you look at what's happened since, and you look at the sort of evidence since, and it shows that maybe those conclusions were premature. I think Liverpool look like they're getting stronger as this season goes on, which is what we were hoping for. What we were talking about early in the season when we were maybe wondering if everything was going to click. We were saying, well, is this a bit lucky, or is it just a precursor to something even better? And the evidence, I think, is starting to mount that Liverpool has turned into a serious team. They're already a serious team. They've lost once domestically since April. They're top of the Premier League. They're favourites for the Europa League. They're into the semi-finals of the League Cup, and now they've just knocked out one of the big guns in the FA Cup without the captain, without their first two left backs, without the guy who's been starting centre back more often than not at the start of the season, without Mo Salah, without Endo, who's become so crucial in recent weeks. So everything's pointing in a good direction. And the Arsenal game yesterday, you're right, they were under fire, and especially in the first 20 minutes. It was one of those. Arsenal have got this tendency against Liverpool, having to start really quickly, and they've done it in the last few meetings. They did it at Anfield in December. They did it last season at Anfield. They did it. They were scored inside the minutes at the Emirates in the league game last season, and they came out of the blocks flying. But I think the difference now, and the game I would compare it to, is the first game of last calendar year against Brentford this time last year. Liverpool just weren't able to cope with that kind of assault. They would crumble, and you would never feel like they were capable of getting back into a game like that and regaining their composure and sort of being able to put their foot on the ball and work the game out. It's very different now, and I thought once Liverpool had got over that first 15 or 20 minutes, I actually felt that they were the better side for the remainder, and I felt like they were the most dangerous side, and they were the side that was always, for me, in the second half, despite Arsenal carrying the threat, and they did carry a threat, through Martinelli and through Saka, I still felt Liverpool were the more likely to go on and win it, and so it proved. And yeah, it was my seat in the press box. Obviously, it's very low down, so you're sort of pitch level, but you're also quite close to the away end, and obviously it was a huge away end yesterday with more than 7,000 fans. And anyone who tells you the FA Cup doesn't matter or it's low down on the list of priorities needs to watch the scenes when that first goal went in, because I tell you, it was one of those where I was very glad to be there.
No, I imagine everyone present was rather glad to be there as well, certainly from a Liverpool persuasion. I mean, you talked about sort of like the composure and sort of the calmness at the back, and I think obviously Ibrahima Konate was a clear sort of man of the match. For many, I will talk about the others as well, but I think he asserted himself pretty quickly from the off. There was that sort of Joe Gomez area who lost possession close to the Liverpool box. Yeah. Konate comes sliding in with a goal-defying sort of challenge. I mean, I do wonder sometimes, because I certainly feel that we're very much appreciating, but I do wonder whether at times those outside of Merseyside certainly seem to be sleeping on his ability, on his potential. There seems to be that presumption from an international perspective that William Saliba, for instance, is the clear leader in terms of the French sort of international setup. I rather think it's a lot closer than that. I actually quite fancy Konate in that personally. I am biased, but I do feel he can be. I don't know. I do feel that he's a bit overlooked beyond the borders of Merseyside.
Yeah, I think probably the problem he's had is consistency of playing, hasn't it? He's had good runs in the team, but I think he's probably not quite had that sort of 2-3 month spell where he's playing every week, because he ability wise, and I fully agree. I mean, listen, I think Saliba is a brilliant defender, by the way, and I thought he was probably Arsenal's best player yesterday, as it happens. But he's been in the team, hasn't he, for pretty much a season. And when he was missing, Arsenal actually dropped off quite noticeably. So it was easy to sort of continue that narrative that he's a difference maker for them. Konate's been a little bit more sort of flashes, hasn't he? 4 or 5 weeks, and obviously Liverpool have had people like Matip to come in, Joe Gomez to come in. We've seen Quansah this year, so there's been that kind of, maybe the perception from outside is that he's not quite established yet, even though, you think back, he was probably Liverpool. Well, I don't even think he was Liverpool's best player in the Champions League final, 18 months ago, a little bit more. So he's already played at a really high level. He played in the World Cup final for France, very nearly got a wonderful assist for a winning goal in the last minute of stoppage time. So he's certainly, made his mark at the very top level. I think the next step for him is to just stay fit and do it consistently over the course of 2-3 months, a whole season, a half of a season, just to really underline that potential. But you think about 23 years of age, the gifts that he's got, and we'll talk about pace and physicality. They're almost a given now when you talk about Premier League footballers. They're all quick, they're all physical, they're all units. But Konate really does seem to have improved a lot since he's been at Liverpool in terms of his reading of the game, the positional play, not getting caught wrong side. That block that you mentioned there, the one from with the Gomez era, it reminded me a lot of sort of great defenders of the past. John Terry's and Jamie Carragher's, of just sensing danger and being in the right place and being willing to put your body on the line and get in there. He's got that about him as well. So he's probably been a little bit underwhelming this season, all told. He probably hasn't played as much football. He hasn't been at the highest level. But you think back to that Arsenal game in December, he was immense in that. And since then, obviously, that must have given him a big boost of confidence. And without Van Dijk on Sunday, it needed both him and Quansah to really sort of, stay on the game and step up. And I thought Konate did for the 90. I thought Quansah did it, particularly after the first sort of half hour. I thought both of those two in the second half in particular were immense.
I mean, it's quite a complicated role as well, specifically Konate's role, specifically given the nature of the man right next to him in Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't think, obviously inverted footballers are more of a thing sort of nowadays, but I do feel also we're not just talking about, being competent just in his own right, but he's competent even despite the fact he's having to manage effectively two positions at once at times.
Well, just think. I mean, I've just compared them to John Terry and Jamie Carragher, but can you imagine either of those two in their day doing that role, one-on-one, high line? Listen, and that's me talking about two of the best defenders in Premier League history and two of my favourite defenders in Premier League history. I think if you ask Carragher, would you fancy doing that without a right back next to you? I think he'd say no, thank you. I'll give that one a miss. So it's bravery, of course, from the manager. It's bravery, or it's knowledge of your players, isn't it? And I don't think there's many centre backs that you could do that with. I don't think you would want to be doing it, with James Tarkowski's and people like that, who again are very good defenders in their own right. It needs a certain type of player and a certain type of character to do that role, because you can look stupid. It's very easy to look stupid in that role because you're getting Gabriel Martinelli running at you into space. You're getting, Kai Havertz drifting off and leaving space in behind you because he's come in as a false nine. So you have to be switched on. That's always the big thing with defenders for me, is always, yes, when they make blocks and when they make tackles, it looks great, but it's the concentration element and it's the being switched on and realising what's going on around you. And I think Konate is getting better and better at that. I actually think as well, I've been very impressed by Jarell Quansah. That second half is the most impressed I've been with Jarell Quansah since he's played for Liverpool, because that was a really tough ask. He'd had a difficult first half. He'd had a bit of an injury, scared, and with his knee, I think it was, or his ankle. He was getting a bit of the run around. Him and Gomez had a little bit of a moment in the first half, and you thought, oh, okay, let's see what he's made of. But I thought in the second half, I thought he was massively impressive. But it all stemmed from that concentration element of just making sure that whenever things did go wrong, and inevitably you are going to be left in positions against teams like Arsenal where you feel exposed. Keeping your composure, keeping your awareness of what's around you. I thought both he and Konate were exceptional.
No, I mean, that's the second time you mentioned Quansah's name right now, and rightly so. He's brilliant. I mean, the stats, I think I've got them right here. Clearance, 2 interceptions, tackle, 3 out of 5 is aerial duels, 1. Generally quite reliable in the pass, 87% of his passes completed. I mean, there was no Van Dijk. We found this out, obviously, before the match due to illness. But, Quansah, again, steps up to the plate. He might not be sort of my personal man of the match, but still delivers in a game where there's an intimidating atmosphere, an intimidating opponent facing a barrage of chances. He's calm, he's reliable, he's just apparently not fazed by any opposition, any occasion. I'm very curious what you make of him, because in my mind it's becoming increasingly difficult to sort of just look at him as this academy lad who's just sort of stepped into the side and made an impression. I really don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm very wary of that happening to sort of younger players, but he feels closer to being a £50 million footballer than he does an academy prospect. That makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
100%. I think that, and listen, of course, you don't know. We're speculating on these kind of things, but I can't imagine a 20-year-old centre-back, Liverpool signing a 20-year-old centre-back who would play any better than Jarell Quansah's played this season. And that doesn't mean that they don't exist or that they shouldn't look for new players or whatever. But I can't imagine anyone that they signed in the summer, whatever. I can't even imagine maybe many 25-year-old centre-backs, 26-year-old centre-backs who would have played better than Quansah has in a Liverpool team and in a Liverpool way. And I think the biggest thing that stood out for me on Sunday, obviously, was he had a couple of moments. There was a couple where he played a few risky passes. I think he put McAllister under it, I think, on one occasion. I think there was one he tried to fire into Núñez, which got intercepted, and it ended up with I think Havertz scuffing a shot. He scuffed a few shots, to be fair, on the day. Sorry, Kai. But he made a few mistakes in the first period, and you saw that he's going to have to ride out a bit of a storm, and it might be one of those learning experience days. But he never changed the way he played. You never saw him just hitting into Rosette or sort of protecting himself and thinking about himself. You saw him every time. There was one in the first half where he ended up sort of almost in the number 9 position, dribbling with the ball, and you thought, wow, okay, that's courage for a young lad. You're not hiding, or you're not going back to basics and doing the things that will make sure that no one turns the spotlight on you. He was playing like a Liverpool defender needs to play, and that's what he's done since he's come into the side. And I'm fully with you. He's what, a dozen games or so, maybe a bit more into his Liverpool career. He looks like he belongs, and every time I see him, he looks more like he belongs. And I think he might just be one of those players that, if he stays fit and if he continues on this trajectory, and even if he just continues, doesn't even get that much better, even if he just stays as he is now, he could save Liverpool a fortune going forward. And they're going to have to buy some players, obviously, in the coming windows, across the park, really, because obviously of ages and contract situations and just general refreshing. But I don't think they need to worry about a player with, finding a player with his capabilities. I think he's good enough.
No, absolutely. I think you're right on the sort of saving money front as well. I think because we were sort of going into this sort of feeling Liverpool probably need, Matip's sort of coming up to, the last year of his contract, the injury. We don't know what's sort of going to happen beyond that. Also need a sort of future plan with sort of Van Dijk's position. So you're thinking that's 2 centre-backs really than you're saying you need. If you can already eliminate one of those needs at this point, it's go right, one forward, one centre-half, maybe a number 6, depending on how we feel come the summer. It reduces the workload, which is always reassuring. Just one final point as well on the back line. There was an interesting question sort of asked after the match. Martin Keown, Danny Murphy and Gary Lineker were sort of talking up Liverpool's performance. And Lineker, interestingly, posed a question after the match you don't really hear posed by any sort of commentator, pundit or journalist beyond Merseyside. He asked Keown and Murphy whether he felt there was a tendency just to focus on the weaknesses around Trent Alexander-Arnold, specifically defensive mistakes, and then exaggerate it. Now, the sort of second pause that followed that question went by very quick. It seemed to sort of hang in the air for quite a while longer. I mean, obviously, Kieran then goes on to sort of push the case and say, yeah, well, we need to push him into midfield, especially on an international basis for England. I mean, I just thought it was an interesting question to see posed from someone who's not from Merseyside, because I feel like we very much feel that way, but we don't often see that sort of perspective espoused by anyone else.
Yeah, do you know what? I've had a little thing about this. I've actually written about this today. Just, is he taken for granted? And I don't mean necessarily, I think everyone knows Trent Alexander-Arnold's a brilliant player, but do we take for granted just what an all-round footballer he is? And we talk a lot about delivery and assists and things like that. But generally, when you watch Trent play, the impact that he has on every single game, and even when he doesn't play particularly well, and maybe his radar's off, or he's under pressure from fullbacks, the impact that he has on the game is just as great as probably anyone in the Premier League in terms of the way that the game's played. And you look at the first half, he played obviously as a right back coming into midfield, but you look at the amount of times, every time Liverpool had some sort of settled play in the game, it was him. It was him finding a pass into someone's feet. It was him getting the ball out of his feet and getting it into space down the line. There was a moment, obviously, when he dribbles across his own 6-yard box, into left back and doesn't just put it down the line and out of play. He puts it into, I think it's Gakpo, or maybe Diaz, with his left foot, and Liverpool are on the attack. And you think, that's just, it's absolutely incredible. And I think it's just become normalised with him. There was a touch in the second half near his own corner flag, where Konate sort of won the ball near the touchline, and then he tried to play it to Trent, but he had to lift it. And it was one of them where it was like, oh, you're going to put that out for potentially a corner, potentially a throw-in. And Trent just kills it over his shoulder and just fires it out. And Liverpool are out, have escaped sort of a bit of pressure. He does it every single week. He does things in the game, 3 or 4 at least, mostly more, where you go, wow, what was that? Like, that was just unbelievable. It was a pass for Núñez in the second half where he just whipped it in behind. I think it was Ben White, and Liverpool are in. He's as good a footballer as there is at the moment in the Premier League, as good a footballer as it is across Europe in terms of his talent and his ability. Of course, yeah, there is a tendency to focus on it. But I think I did see a stat, and maybe I shouldn't be sharing it because I don't know if it's. I haven't really checked it, but I saw a stat that of all the left wingers that have played against Liverpool this season, I think only Anthony Gordon scored or assisted the goal.
Oh, I saw this as well. Yeah,
yeah, I saw that. I mean, listen, that might not be true, and it might be people shouting at the screen now. But when you think about it, I can't think of many. I can think of moments where I thought, that was a bit dicey, but I can't think of many where I come off and thought, well, he's just absolutely rinsed him. The only one that I remember really thinking, wow, like that was a tough afternoon, was Doku against City. And even he didn't in the end score. So it's this risk and reward. So the other reason I wanted to mention it was that obviously a lot of the Trent debate around his defending comes with an England flavour to it. Well, I'll tell you now, I've never seen Trent have a month as bad as Kieran Trippier had in December. I've never seen Trent miss as many games as Reece James misses. And I remember having similar debates or hearing similar debates about Kyle Walker when he was younger, when he was Trent's age, about his defending, saying, oh yeah, he's a great athlete, gets up and down, but he can't trust him defensively. I remember him giving a penalty away, Kyle Walker, during the COVID season against Liverpool. And the response from Roy Keane in the studio was, what's happened there? Why is Kyle Walker giving away that penalty? And Roy Keane said, because he's an idiot and he can't defend. And I distinctly remember that debate. So this, maybe it's just a thing, a big club thing that we sort of, there's no point telling everyone that Liverpool players are good because everyone knows Liverpool players are good. So let's have a look deeper and let's try and find some sort of fault with them. People do it with Salah, don't they? Sometimes, try and say, oh, well, he's not at his best, but he's got 24 goals or whatever. It's a little bit similar with Trent. For me, there should be no possible grey area with Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's a world-class player. He's 25 years of age. I think he's already among the greats of Liverpool. It scares me to think by the time he's finished just where he might be in terms of appearances, in terms of honours, in terms of stature at Liverpool. and he looks like he's getting better and better, and that can only be good news for Liverpool. And yeah, if Martin Keown and Danny Murphy want to sort of point holes in, and him struggling to handle pretty good attackers like Gabriel Martinelli, well, that's their luck, isn't it? I looked at Trent. I think he won possession back more times than anyone else on the pitch. Yesterday, I think he won 7 out of 9 duels. I think it was. He won both his aerial duels. He's not a bad defender, and he wouldn't be playing for Liverpool at the top of the Premier League and chasing other trophies if he was.
No, absolutely. Very good sort of stats. I mean, I should add, I didn't add, but I think Danny Murphy did sort of loosely agree with sort of Lineker's point on everyone outside of Merseyside seeming to sort of poke holes into Trent's game. But
I'm picking Danny Murphy and Mark. To be honest, it's not. I think it just might be a little bit of a thing of, is it just boring to say, well, what a player Trent is? Wow, what a player he is. So. And look, that's not to say he's infallible, and that's not to say he doesn't have bad games. And there aren't moments where you go, just be a bit more intense with your defender. And sometimes he can just dangle a leg out. But really, it doesn't cost Liverpool, does it? His defensive insecurity hasn't cost Liverpool since he's been in the side. They've been up near the top, challenging for every single honour most seasons, and he's been a huge part of it. So, yeah, if that's the price. If the price of having Trent Alexander-Arnold in your team is occasionally you think a left winger might score, or he gets into the penalty area and another player has to make a block or a challenge, I'll take that all day long.
I do think you're right, though, especially with the point you make. I think the commentary around him is so binary to the point of, and again, this happened again after sort of the Arsenal game. It was very much, he's a great passer of the ball, best passer of the ball, certainly in English football. But the defending, rather than, as you say, there is very little focus on his all-round sort of contributions. It is one really good part of his play and one supposedly really poor part of his play. It doesn't ever seem, the conversation doesn't ever seem to evolve into an actual all-round appreciation of everything he does. But 100%. Hopefully, maybe one day we'll reach that point.
He's one of the most two-footed players in the league. He's one of the most two-footed footballers in the Premier League. He's definitely improved defensively, especially in the air. He's improved massively. I watch him every week, and I can see what he is now to what he was then. And he isn't your classic sort of, I can't even think of the perfect example of the perfect right back defender, but he's not that.
Probably him, isn't it?
He's so much. Yeah, he's so much better. He's so much better than he was. His delivery has got better as he's got into the team because he's more varied. He puts it in with the outside of his foot. He puts it in with his left foot. He whips it low. He puts it high. He shoots. He's like, what do you want? What more do you want? There was one yesterday where he ran away. He took a touch. I think he whipped it away from Reece Nelson and drove forward. And you thought, wow, you could imagine someone fusing the footage with like a Steven Gerrard clip or something where it was like, wow, like he's striding away from people through midfield. It was, yeah. And also, there's the other part. He plays 2 positions like in the same game. He plays it like he's just I could talk all day about him, to be perfectly honest, and I still wouldn't say enough good things about him.
You reach the 70-minute mark, don't you? And he steps into. I mean, I tweeted about this sort of during the game. And Klopp deserves sort of credit for this. For sort of brings on Bradley
Bobby Clark.
Bradley, and obviously puts him. Bobby Clark completely had a brain fart there. Brings on Bradley, puts him at right back, pushes Trent into midfield, and it seems, it just seems so natural that sort of, it steps into that sort of holding role effectively, and it's just remarkable. There's just no fuss over it, is there?
No, and it was a quote from Jurgen. I've got it actually here on in front of me. He said, 1-0 up. He spoke to everybody without me shouting at him and telling him that he has to speak. He said to make sure we're really compact, stuff like this. He said, "My God, what a player!" And that's another side to the game that I think's come this season, where you're seeing him. There are some players, Jamie Carragher, for example. I've mentioned him a couple of times on this, so apologies, but doesn't matter if he's got an armband on or whether you tell him to be the captain today and go and do the coin toss. He'll play the same. I think people like Gerrard and like Trent, I think it lifts their shoulders when they're responsible in the team with the captain's armband or vice captain around the club. I think you've seen at this. He's just grown. He's grown a couple of inches almost, in terms of his stature. You see he's accepting, okay, yeah, this is my team. I'm responsible for this team now. I'm not just one of the really good players within a team that's led by Jordan Henderson, James Milner. I'm the young lad who's sort of living his dream. This is my Liverpool now. This is my era of Liverpool, where it's going to be me dominating the sort of the talk. It's going to be me on the pitches with the with the cups and whatever we win and things like that. With me, him, Virgil. So you can see that making an impact on him. And I didn't think it was possible for him to sort of take on more responsibility within Liverpool, because he's always been that sort of creative hub and tactical hub. But what he's done since he's been moving into that hybrid role is nothing short of magnificent, to be perfectly honest. And off the pitch as well, he seems to be really maturing too.
No, absolutely. I think obviously you mentioned previously about how scary it could be in terms of the honours he could win, the player he could even develop into. I think it's scary what Liverpool as a whole could possibly achieve this season. I think it's increasingly becoming the case that Liverpool's biggest sort of opponent would be themselves in this. And I mean, you look at the players we could be getting back and sort of playing that sort of fragile knife's edge of sort of injuries and that kind of thing. I think injuries are sort of the main thing, really, because Liverpool, especially in the context of, sort of the January window, we could really ride our luck here. We've got, I think Tsimikas was already out on the pitch, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, him and Robertson is a tough one, because I think they'll be fit but not able to play for I think Robert, it's one of them. It's so fragile with the contact thing, but the fitness wise, I think they'll be ready to go sort of straight away. Obviously, once they get the all clear. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the players they've got to come back. You've got Thiago, hopefully at some point this month. You've obviously got Szoboszlai, fingers crossed for the next league game. Obviously, Salah and Endo. It's a terrible thing to say. I think Jürgen said it on Friday, didn't he? He said, "I hope you have a really good. I hope you have a really good group."
I don't wish you luck.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, whatever happens there, it happens, and good luck to both of them. But they'll be back next month. Is the key point of that. Matip's obviously a longer term, and was that it? I think that might. And Bajcetic as well. Obviously, I think he's sort of again just waiting for the green light before he's given the all clear. So it could be, and then factor in that Conor Bradley, comes on, and I thought was outstanding in that last 15 minutes. Really, really helped lock down that win. Bobby Clark hasn't played a minute for the senior team this season. It's only his third senior appearance. Comes on. I think the biggest cheer he got from me definitely was when he brought Declan Rice down, and for that yellow card, I thought, wow, that's some serious senior pro behaviour from that one. In the last minute, you've got other players around the squad that Jürgen clearly thinks, if I need them at the Emirates, I can use them. You've got some options. So there's almost a 3-tier element to the squad. There's the sort of the ones that always play. There's the ones that come in and out and mix and match and play, 1 week and go on the bench and then you've got a few younger players as well who can really make an impact. And yeah, if you can get the majority of them fit for the majority of the rest of the season, there's not many excuses. The only things that are going to sort of derail Liverpool are Man City and injuries. And yeah, that's a familiar. It's nice to be back on familiar soil, really, isn't it? In terms of after a year off, it's nice to be back in that position of looking over the shoulder and saying, okay, what are they up to?
I know, what a transitionary season this is, really. I mean, I suppose that's the question, really, isn't it? Because I do think it's the case of Liverpool could ride their luck here, the injuries will work out. But, we already saw that there were almost these little tiny hints of concern. Van Dijk's obviously, thankfully, only in an illness, not a serious injury.
Yeah.
I was a little concerned with Quansah because he pulls up during the game after, I think his foot rolls over the ball, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he carries on and he's fine. It's a hard one because the luck thing could really work out. I'm sure Klopp, of course, has historically said he doesn't want to just willy-nilly go into the market, upset the balance of his squad, or have a player too many, and then sort of go when a winner is going to play. Buying in January, of course, is complicated in of itself, but there is a real sense here that Liverpool could do something special with the season, and we've seen before in January, obviously. Further afield with the Diaz signing, plenty of others, of course. You bring these people in, and it really supercharges sort of the rest of your season. Yeah. I mean, for instance, could we see a fresh face at the back, like sort of of the mould of sort of a Gonçalo Inacio, for instance, who could come in and spark a sense of, we're really going for this, lads. You know, there's a lot on the table here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is it's more difficult to do it with a defensive sign and to really like sort of energize the place, because if you don't get the injuries, they're not going to play, are they? You know, or they're not going to be needed that much. So, and really, you know, bringing in a Diaz or a Gakpo, I mean, different situation, but Gakpo came in. It maybe doesn't necessarily make that instant difference. It just gives you a bit more wiggle room in terms of the squad. But I agree. You know, if you were to show an ambition, so you know, if it was a player that you really wanted, as opposed to sort of a short term kind of sign and, you know, just a body, then it could really send a good statement to the squad and to the club and to the fans, to the rest of the league, that wow, like they've got themselves in a good position and they're going again. You know, like they're right at it. You know, the player you mentioned, obviously, Inacio, I think that'll be a difficult one because he's a left-sided centre back, and you're gonna have, where's he going to play? You know, when Virgil's available.
Good luck with Virgil.
Yeah, exactly that. But definitely, you know, I think if a player that Liverpool wanted long term was available in this window, I think there'd be a very good case for Liverpool doing it, because you can all the what ifs. You can get caught up in what ifs, and you know, there's as much chance probably of a new player getting injured as there is Konate getting injured, or Jarell Quansah. But wouldn't it be nice for Liverpool to just give themselves a little bit of breathing space and not have to, you know, I think the camera panned to Jurgen when, I think it was Quansah, when he went down, it panned to Jurgen on the sideline, and you could see, I mean, it was written on his face, wasn't it? It was like, please, come on, no. And when he got up and carried on, I was sort of waiting for the moment where he just sits down again and sort of, that's it, you know. We were delaying while we get a sub ready. So the fact that Quansah carried on was a big moment, but it would, having an extra body obviously would remove a little bit of that tension, wouldn't it? Mid game, where you're sort of wincing every time a player goes in for a big challenge, or every time he sort of, you know, looks towards the sideline, you're thinking, oh, come on, please, let's get lucky with this one. I think that would be the only sort of, the biggest concern I would have. Take Man City out. Man City, they'll do what they do. They'll probably win most games that they play, be it between now and the end of the season. You can't control that. You can control the game when you come to Anfield and you can beat them. But the one thing Liverpool can potentially control is you can just make their life a little bit more comfortable by having one extra body around the squad, whether that's a centre back, whether it's a full back, whether it's a player who can do a bit of both. I think that would be the one area I'd be most happy with Liverpool doing something between now and the end of the window. But if they don't and they ride their luck, they can still they can still cope with most things.
It's a complicated one, isn't it? Because, you know, it is, you're probably not getting in at left centre back unless there's a serious injury to Virgil. And then even you think of the right centre back, you've got Konate. Quansah's been absolutely phenomenal this season as well. So it's, you know, who are you signing?
You don't need a left back. You've got Joe Gomez now. The
apparently can play anywhere.
Left back.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he's been brilliant. Maybe just you're thinking longer term, obviously, and you know, in terms of Virgil 33 going on, Joel Matip coming to the end of his time at Liverpool. You know, Konate, like I say, still got to add that layer of consistency. Quansah, I suspect he's going to a pretty good level, but we still don't know what sort of hurdles are on the way. So you're thinking longer term, but if you could get the longer term signing now, I think that would make a huge difference.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to briefly talk about sort of forwards as well, which seems a bit unfair given how well. So we look at Sergio Jota, for instance, has sort of come into the side, got an assist as well last night against Arsenal. He's not needed a lot of minutes to make an impact. He's just absolutely phenomenal forward. And Luis Diaz, of course, coming into some form as well, and the switching of the wings as well really helped him. That's where he scored his goal, of course, press Aaron Ramsdale on the right, I believe. Still, again, we're in January. We have to talk about it because it's a unique opportunity, a difficult opportunity, because we're looking at it in the sense of Salah's off at the African Cup of Nations. I think his performances this season, though, very much warranted discussions over a new contract. And I'd be massively disappointed personally if we ended up selling him after all this in the summer. It'd be such a waste of an opportunity there. But I think there is a potential box there, and it is so dependent on what's available on the market in terms of future planning. Again, opportunity, price, so on and so forth. But I mean, we've seen so many names linked recently. Pedro Neto, PSV's Johan Bakayoko. More recently, football transfers have linked Leeds' Crysencio Summerville and Crystal Palace's Michael Olise. I had a look at Summerville. He's one that has popped up before, not sort of for Liverpool, but definitely sort of for other Premier League sides. But what interests me, particularly in the context of Bakayoko, is they're deemed statistically similar, according to stats compiled by FBref. What separates him from Bakayoko, though, is he's more... Summerville is more balanced when it comes to creating and scoring goals. So in terms of his XG, his non-penalty XG, and obviously we have to account for the fact he's been playing Championship football this season. But over the last sort of 365 days, his non-penalty XG ranks in the 94th percentile compared to other attackers in Europe's sort of top 5 leagues. Expected goals, 95th percentile. So this isn't just a player who's good at one particular thing. It's, again, not a sort of Salah like for like, but someone who can offer something more than just goal, more than just assists. He's quite effective. And again, plenty of touches in the sort of attacking penalty box, 98th percentile there, comfortable carrying the ball. There's a lot of boxes ticked here. And again, we do have to sort of emphasise he has been playing his football in the Championship. But, Liverpool have looked at kind of players before, and we've sort of gone, we talked about Andy Robertson and Gini Wijnaldum, and we've gone, they play for Hull City, they play for Newcastle, they weren't doing as well. And, well, why can't Liverpool go for, say, a Leeds or someone of that sort of variety? I think the profile is intriguing, I think, at the very least.
Yeah, I think he makes more sense than Johan Bakayoko in terms of you're not signing a player at the moment, Liverpool, who's going to have great expectations of going straight into the side. They're not going to, unless they sign Kylian Mbappe, they're not going to sign someone who's going to go right into the Liverpool team and start every game. So it would be harder to imagine Johan Bakayoko accepting that role, given that the club he's been playing for, the level he's been playing at, and the clubs that are reportedly in for him. So Summerville, obviously, if you come from the Championship, I think he'd have a decent idea that, okay, I'm going to have to be patient and maybe get me minutes elsewhere. That would be the one. I look at Michael Olise. I covered the City game against Palace last month, and I couldn't have been more impressed by Olise in the game. A Roy Hodgson side away at City, and conceding possession and not showing much ambition, and he still stood out every time he had the ball. He'd done something. But when you speak to people who know him, or no recruitment processes, the question they would ask is, will you see the same level of Michael Olise if he's not the main man somewhere else, or if he's a rotation player and he's not got that rhythm of playing every single game? Possibly not. So there are other elements that, rather than just is he a good player, or does he score goals, or does he create goals, to consider. I think Liverpool have obviously got high hopes for some of the younger forwards. Bendo has had a difficult season this year with, getting that bad injury. He maybe was a little bit, I think he probably would be a bit underwhelmed by his performances in some of the cup games, even though he had moments. They've also got high hopes for him, so don't rule him out. Obviously, don't rule Kate Gordon out. He's one that needs to get back to playing some kind of football, and maybe he might be one that gets primed for a loan move next season potentially, or if all goes even better, he could be around the first team squad. So it'd have to be a player that was a very, very convincing argument to come into this Liverpool group of forwards, or like I say, someone who is just unquestionably elite. I think it's more likely that Liverpool will be sort of looking around elsewhere at this stage, looking at midfielders or defenders before they're starting to sort of bring in big forward signings.
Do you think the main points, Percy, on your point, for Liverpool, where would you be sort of looking to prioritise? I mean, I realise I've skipped over midfield, but I personally don't see Liverpool finding a better number 6 at this stage of the season than Alexis McAllister or even Butiro Endo. And that's quite the challenge in terms of what Liverpool are looking for. I think it would be either the back line or the forward line they strengthen. But do you have a particular?
I think mine would be, I think, a longer term, or short to medium long term centre back. I think someone that steps into Matip's place in the squad. I think look, what we've learned from this season, maybe we've learned not to sort of make conclusions around Joe Gomez, but Joe Gomez seems to be a fullback in this Liverpool setup, as opposed to a centre back, and it looks like it suits him, doesn't it? That sort of that role. He looks like he's relishing playing a fullback, where he's actually, his strengths are highlighted and his weaknesses are hidden a little bit more, aren't they? In terms of, I was thinking this the other day. I was thinking, if I was a winger, even if I was a very good winger, would I want to play against Joe Gomez? You could have a tough afternoon against him. He's quick, he's strong, he's good in the air, he's tall. He can run. He's not nasty. So you don't even you don't even get into real battles with him. He's a clean player, isn't he? So he can make you look silly if he's on his game, Joe Gomez. And I think he won his battle with Saka yesterday after the first 15 minutes quite comfortably, not for the first time this season as well. So I think he's maybe now a fullback in my eyes. So that leaves you with 3 centre backs, plus the break glass option of Gomez. So I think they'd still need one more. That would be my sort of longer term squad planning. And then of course you've got the spectre of maybe Thiago leaves in the summer. You might have a space for another sort of all-round midfield kind of player. The one, obviously, the Salah. Salah's the fly in the ointment, really, isn't he? If Salah, if you lost Salah, then of course, I think you need to do some serious business in the forward line. But as it stands, maybe the only thing I would say that Liverpool could lack is a right-sided player. But that could be Bendo. Longer term, that could be someone like him or Gordon who grow into that role. I don't think. I mean, it could be Diaz, couldn't it? If we judge on the second half yesterday, I think he looked like he was sort of, I don't know, it maybe simplified the game for him a little bit more. He was able to run into space a lot more, wasn't he, rather than cutting inside. Maybe that could be one of them that we see a bit more of. I like Nunes out left. I thought that worked in the second half. I thought it worked against West Ham early in the season. I think that's still a pretty good option. So yeah, I think Liverpool's forward line is pretty healthy. But that's dependent on having the Egyptian in the ranks. I think if that was to change, then we'd have to be seeing some spectacular business.
I mean, I reckon it would be probably easier to push, as you say, sort of push Diaz sort of right wing and replace him on the left than it would be to sort of find the ideal profile to compete with sort of Salah there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You mentioned Neto earlier. You mentioned Neto earlier, didn't you? I think he's a brilliant player, Pedro Neto. I think Jarrett Bowen's a brilliant player, but I think that's probably gone too far now age-wise in terms of his age. But I think he's a brilliant player. Yeah, but I think he's listen, if you wanted to try and convince me otherwise, I'd listen to him as a potential Liverpool signing. But yeah, they would be more suited to maybe playing, in a different way to Salah. In terms of not just being that sort of fixed right-sided player who gets all your goals. It might be easier to replace them from let's add some searing pace into it, or let's add a flying winger to the ranks, or let's add a big number 9, another big number 9 to the rank. It'd be easier to go down that route than to say, right, who's the next Mohamed Salah? That would be a very tough ask, because let's face it, we didn't even see this Mohamed Salah emerging, did we? When he signed, we thought it was a good signing, but we never saw him being this great of the game, I think, when he came. So trying to find another one of them, it seems like you're pushing your luck a little bit, and you're asking for a bit too much.
It's very much needle in the haystack stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also, I wanted to touch on briefly as well on your point with the back line, because you mentioned about sort of Joe Gomez also being considered now as sort of a fullback, and it very much almost seems we're at the point now in terms of what we could look to have in this Liverpool back line is effectively another Joe Gomez, someone who's quite competent either left, right, and can slot in centrally, which is, we've got one, thankfully. But
championship manager, defender, RLC. You know, those they were worth their weight in gold once upon a time on Championship Manager or Football Manager, because you could just plug them in anywhere. But he is that, isn't he, Joe Gomez? He's the sort of the new James Milner in many ways.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. You know, versatility is gold stuff. We gold dust rather. But it seems like an ideal place to end this latest podcast. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on yet again. We can of course catch your work on X at Neil Jones Gore, and of course with your Substack, we're covering Liverpool at neilj.substack.com. We'll be publishing this chat again on Empire of the Cop Substack, empireofthecop.substack.com. It'll be going on our YouTube too. Keep an eye out on our social media. But this has been another episode of EOTK Insider with the lovely Neil Jones, and I've been your host, Farrell Keeling. Have a very blessed day. Take care.